Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Meyers. I am talking today with Michael Dudley, who is the author of a new book that he'll tell us about, as well as the librarian at the University of Winnipeg in Canada. Michael, I'll turn it over to you.
All right.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Bob, for having me on the channel. I'm really excited to announce, I just found out this morning, actually, that my book, The Shakespeare Authorship Question in Philosophy, Knowledge, Rhetoric, Identity, was just published by Cambridge Scholars Publishing in the UK. So it is available for sale, and I'm thrilled about it. This isn't this isn't the final version. It's actually in hard copy, a hardcover. This is one that I printed out earlier for my own purposes, but it gives you a general idea. And I will be presenting on video a couple of chapters at the New Orleans conference. So if anyone's attending, then you'll get a flavor of two of the chapters from the book.
Okay. We always like breaking news here, so that's good enough. Give me your precise title and what you're doing at the university.
Sure. My title is Accessibility, International, and Extended Services Librarian, but I'm the librarian for history as well as theater and film. So I thought that was a very good disciplinary combination for me to be able to conduct this research over the last decade. And I was awarded a research study leave. So this past January to June, I was completing the book. And I say this in the acknowledgments, the University of Winnipeg has been very supportive of my Shakespeare-related research over the past 10 years. They gave me a grant to go to a conference to present it. They gave me all kinds of venues to speak, not only internally to alumni, the theater department, but also out in the community to seniors' homes and high schools. So I think the University of Winnipeg really ought to be commended for being open to what is otherwise an academic taboo.
If they have a t-shirt or sweatshirt, I'll be happy to buy it. If they've got a coffee mug, I'd be happy to start using it. We support our friends.
Exactly. Yeah.
So tell me about the book. What's in it? What caused you to write it?
Well, I've been writing articles for the past 10 years that were published in the Oxfordian, Brief Chronicles. There was one that was published in the book, Teaching and Learning Practices for Academic Freedom. And, not being, a degreed historian or a degreed English major, I have a love for Shakespeare that I gained when I was a theater major back in the early to mid 1980s. And I had the opportunity to do some really wonderful scenes from Shakespeare. But as a librarian, and also I'm a degreed city planner, I have a graduate degree in city planning.
Really?
I realized that I was in a position to offer some interdisciplinary approaches to the study of the authorship question that I wasn't seeing other people doing. So the first article that I published was in Brief Chronicles in 2014 that looked at the rhetoric of natural genius.
Now, let me stop you because not everybody will know what Brief Chronicles is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's one of the journals published by the Shakespeare Oxford Fellowship, edited by Roger Strittmatter. And so I was doing a lot of reading into, I was the librarian for Indigenous Studies at the time at the University of Winnipeg, and a lot of literature on decolonizing approaches and empire, the rhetoric of empire. And I noticed that the rhetoric of the natural genius of the West really resonated with the natural genius of Shakespeare. And so I wrote a paper that looked at how that rhetoric evolved at the same time and was mutually reinforcing. And then I did another paper in 2015 on Library of Congress subject headings and library collection development of the authorship question. I wrote an article for the de Vere Society newsletter where I analyzed 50 of the How I Became an Oxfordian essays. I did a qualitative study of those essays, and I was in a unique position to do that because my mother, Dr. Nancy Dudley, wrote her dissertation in the late 1980s on paradigm shifts and the experience of paradigm shifts. And so I was able to apply her framework to analyzing the How I Became an Oxfordian essays, and the results I thought were quite fascinating. That's now chapter 10 in the book. I wrote a chapter for this book on academic freedom, looking at the issue of epistemic injustice, so how the Stratfordians treat the skeptics and how it's not consistent with sound scholarship. And then in 2022, most recently, there was an article in the Oxfordian on belief ethics and how the mainstream Stratfordian belief in Shakespeare as Shakespeare isn't consistent with belief ethics. So I realized a couple of years ago that I had all of these articles that were all taking some kind of external approach, applying external criteria. And so I decided, reorganize these, add a few extra chapters, and I've got a book. I've got an argument here. So I applied for it and was awarded the research leave, and the book ended up evolving significantly over the leave. Chapter 1, I'm calling towards a meta understanding of the Shakespeare authorship debate.
Meta means big, right?
Meta means an understanding of our understanding,
okay.
and so looking at the internal characteristics of the debate, but also the context in academic culture and in the broader culture. I then in chapter 2 look at the bad habits of Stratfordian biography, but in terms of what might well-known philosophers, Enlightenment philosophers, have to say about the reliance on imagination, for example, and one of the major things that I'm quite excited about is that I was looking at Hegelian dialectic. So Georg Hegel's idea about that when you take two opposites and you crash them together through a process of what he called Aufheben, you end up abolishing the meaning of those two things to create something entirely new. And so I realized that Shakespeare the author and Shakespeare the historic individual, the businessman, have been crashed together as opposites for the last couple hundred years. And with this process of Hegelian dialectic, the meanings of Shakespeare the author, Shakespeare the individual have been abolished and uplifted, and we now have William Shakspere, the Bard of Avon. And, of course, post-Stratfordians, Oxfordians know that we're not using the word Shakespeare the same way that Shakespeare's, mainstream Shakespeare Stratfordian scholars are. But when you look at it in terms of the dialectical process, it really reveals how impossible it is to debate Stratfordians, because the meaning of the name Shakespeare, the author, Shakespeare, the individual, have been abolished. They don't mean what we say they mean anymore.
Let me ask you at that juncture, because you've sort of inadvertently become a front man for an Oxfordian position. And in that, if I may, Hegelian combination, I'd be curious to know how traditional Stratfordians respond to you in your position. It's either they criticize you or they ignore you. It seems to be pretty typical. But I wonder if you can speak to that, please.
Well, I don't know how Stratfordians will respond to this, because what I'm doing in the book is applying external, disinterested, recognized criteria from other disciplines, from epistemology, from rhetoric, paradigm shifts, and applying it to the authorship debate. And so, especially chapters 4 and 5 that look at theories of knowledge and theories of truth reveal that the Stratfordian position is completely inconsistent with those theories of knowledge and truth. You just cannot apply these external theories to the Stratfordian position. We've been for so long caught up in debating the facts internal to the debate, and it has been to some degree successful. We keep making a little bit of progress, but I don't think Stratfordians will have any response or will be able to have any response to this analysis, because if you use these external theories, there's nothing to hang on to. The Stratfordian position and how it is practiced and promoted by Stratfordian scholars is just a total academic outlier. So what my goal was not to prove which authorship theory was true, and I'm focusing on the Oxfordian theory and the Stratfordian theory. What I wanted to show was which theory was more truth conducive and tends to produce true beliefs rather than false ones. And the truth conduciveness of the Stratfordian model is just, completely undetectable by these external means.
Yes, I would have to agree with you. Do you take a look parenthetically at any of the other authorship candidates, Marlowe, Bacon, etc.?
I mentioned them for context, but I said in the introduction that this analysis was already so complex that I just didn't feel I could bring in the other authorship candidates. And,
I see, by the way, that the foreword in your book is by Geir Uhag,
yes,
whom I had interviewed for this series several months ago.
Yes, I was very fortunate. I'm very grateful to Geir for writing the foreword. I was very excited about that.
Had you known him before, or is he someone you?
No, I hadn't. Of course, I watched your interview with him. I contacted him over Facebook, as we're both a part of, the Shakespeare Facebook group. And so I ran it by him and I said, I'll send you a copy, see what you think. And so he was very kind enough to write a foreword for the book.
Nice. Yeah. He's very big. I mean, he has a lot of respect over there, quite the critic and the poet. Let me ask you, because I've got the table of contents for the book. Let me ask you to talk a bit about your first chapter, which is towards an understanding of the Shakespeare authorship debate. What do you mean by that, and how do you move us towards an understanding of it?
Well, yeah, so like I said, a meta understanding is an understanding of our understanding, and the problem, with the terminology, that we're not using the same language. And then this results in widespread ignorance and misunderstanding in the public at large because the terminology isn't being shared. I talk about the scholarly disincentives to genuine biographical inquiry because the meat and potatoes of the Shakespeare biographer is the opportunity for the biographer to use their own imagination. That's what biographers love doing with Shakespeare. So there's no incentive for them to really engage in genuine historical inquiry. And there's other features too, like the quasi-religious nature of Shakespeare is a real impediment to being able to do a serious inquiry. And as James Warren talks about in his book, Shakespeare Revolutionized, that the subject of Shakespeare is isolated in the academy, and Shakespeare scholars have this aura of being the epitome of scholarship, and there's no real interdisciplinary investigation of the biography. So it just creates a cultural inertia around the standard biography, and as a result, post-Stratfordians, Oxfordians, Baconians, Marlovians are, criticized, condemned, called snobs, conspiracy theorists, and so on. I then step back and look a bit at academic culture and the controversies in the academy, where certain views, certain theories have been marginalized in the past, and then also looking at the cultural climate right now, which is particularly problematic for Shakespeare because he's the epitome of the dead white male. There's all of this move to deconstruct and decolonize the curriculum, and Shakespeare's becoming a victim of that. And I think, one of the arguments I make is that we're kind of running out of time to resolve the authorship debate because Shakespeare is under attack in pedagogy and in the academy.
I started out thinking that when I left high school that I would, as I was in high school, that I wanted to study and teach Shakespeare. I had one major problem, which was not resolved for many years, and that was I didn't believe the biography, and therefore I couldn't do anything about the teaching part. So
right.
Went off to a career in journalism, etc. In chapter 2, you talk about Hamlet confronting Hegel's ghost.
Right.
Is that the same Hegel we've been dealing with, or
yeah?
Everybody knows Hamlet. That's why I want to get to
it. Yeah. It was kind of a fanciful title, but the more I looked into the philosophical implications of Stratfordian biography, I kept running into the influence of Hegel. And Hegel's ghost is an expression in philosophy that Western philosophy has been haunted by Hegel's ghost, that his influence is so great. And there were just a number of characteristics about Hegelian philosophy that seemed applicable to analyzing standard biographies, the imagination of the biographers, the mysticism involved. And Elizabeth Winkler has this great quote in her book where a Shakespeare scholar said that the authorship question spoils the fun for them because it's answering questions that they don't want answered. They want to keep pursuing this mystical right that doesn't provide answers. They don't want the answers.
I've always thought that writing biography of Shakespeare was a wonderful opportunity for creative, fact-based fiction, because there isn't a hell of a lot you can say. In fact, there's virtually nothing you can say that is a true biographical statement, except he was born, he lived, he died, he married, he had illiterate children, and he had no books and left a really weird will. Kind of taking this for full circle, is it possible to liberate, which is your phrase, Shakespeare from the accumulated dust and debris that's fallen on it for centuries?
I think so, yes. What I'm really happy about in terms of the structure of the book is that part 3 focuses on identity. And I lead off with the analysis of the How I Became an Oxfordian essays, and looking at the importance of one's identity in the authorship debate. But then also, I look at Julia Galef's book, The Scout Mindset, Why Some People See Things Clearly and Others Don't. And she talks about how one of our problems we think we know the answer to something is that we're guided by motivated reasoning. We want to be proven right, And she calls that the soldier mindset, that you're trying to defend your identity, that you've tied your beliefs so closely with your identity that you're no longer engaged in actual inquiry. What she calls the scout mindset is holding your identity lightly in terms of your beliefs so that you can relinquish beliefs when they no longer work, that you engage in open inquiry, you test your beliefs, and you don't become so wedded to them that you won't let them go. And so that's what I look at in the conclusion, is the power of her approach here, that I think can help open up inquiry in the debate.
What is there a follow-up in terms of your book? Do you see yourself publishing other sort of analyses of this, or working on some of the other topics you deal with academically? What's next for you?
I think I'm going to give it a rest for now, but
hard to believe.
Yeah, there's certainly other approaches that I could have taken. There were a few things that I had to drop. I think the argument here holds together pretty well, mixing my previously published work with the new content. And the How I Became an Oxfordian essay really ties the book together very solidly, because it reveals just how powerful the Oxfordian model is in terms of unleashing our knowledge and our understanding and the explanatory power that model has. The Stratfordian model has no explanatory power. It's just, you see Shakespeare, growing up, and then suddenly he's written Venus and Adonis, and there's just no way to explain it. And then in chapter 11, I pull all of the external theories together in a series of tables and reveal that it's not just that we're comparing authorial models, but it's two completely different worldviews. And it's not just about knowledge. It's not just about historiography, but it's even about human nature and the nature of reality itself. So it's quite stark. I think the listeners of this will find it quite illuminating, I hope.
If I wanted to learn about Oxford on your campus or any other campus you know about, how would I do that? Are there classes you're aware of? I mean, how do I?
Well, at the University of Winnipeg Library, as the theater librarian, I have created a Shakespeare Studies library research guide that includes a tab on authorship research. I've also bought quite a few books. I think we've got a pretty excellent authorship collection at the University of Winnipeg. I'm
wondering if what you've done at Winnipeg couldn't serve as a model for other librarians to pull together some resources and books that they already have. I know that the annual issue of The Oxfordian, which is a peer-reviewed journal, is in hundreds of libraries, and that can be used as the basis. I just always think it's interesting, sort of expanding, trying to figure out how to expand knowledge here.
James Warren was kind enough to send me a copy, so now that's in the reference collection at the University of Winnipeg. Last year, viewers might also know that Bill Boyle and Catherine Hattagaze and myself co-published a paper in the very prestigious Library Science Journal, Cataloging and Classification Quarterly, about subject headings related to the authorship debate called Tongue-Tied by Authorities.
Right.
Reforming the Library of Congress. So that was very exciting to get more mainstream exposure.
Has that already been published?
Yes, it was published late 2022.
I know Catherine has mentioned that. We ought to, I think, make a bigger deal about it than we've done so far. So I'll get with her and do that. Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been great.
Well, Thank you. Thank you, Bob. I would just also remind viewers that I have created a website for the book, SAQ and Philosophy, so sacandphilosophy.com. There's an opportunity there to win a free copy of the book.
Whoa.
And also, I'm going to be doing a Facebook Live book launch on November 30th, 6 p.m. Central, co-hosted by Stephen Sable.
Excellent.
Yeah. So check out my website, and I hope to see people at the book launch.
Terrific.
Yeah.
I hope people go to it, and look forward to keeping in touch.
Okay. Thanks very much, Bob.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.